Okay, it is 6 p.m. Good evening, everybody. We will call to order this meeting of the Burlington Police Commission. I'm Michaela Finneran. I am the chair of the commission. We will start with roll call and determination of quorum. Commissioner Romeo von Herman.
Yes.
Commissioner Julia Genorio.
Here.
Commissioner Karen Paul.
Here.
And online, I believe we have Commissioner Tessa Fast. Do we have Tessa? Okay, it seems like Tessa might be running a few minutes late, but Tessa should be joining us. And then Commissioners Depper and Comerford are absent, but with 4, I believe that gives us a quorum. So we will move forward. Our next step is the agenda. Are there any additions or modifications to the agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries. The agenda is adopted. Next up, we have our minutes from last month. Is there a motion to adopt the previous meeting's minutes?
So
Motion
moved.
to adopt. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Sorry. Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Minutes are approved. Our next item is public comment. Are there any members of the public here to address the commission? Please take a seat at the desk. Turn on the microphone and state your name for the record.
Is it on? Great. My name is Sam Donnelly. I live in Ward 5 in Burlington, and I wanted to share a quick note of appreciation for everything that this commission does and for our BPD and fire work that is going on. I just came from the REIB commitment, and it was great to see both members from our fire department and other community departments there as well at that meeting. I also wanted to highlight that I know the Police Commission, along with a wide variety of community stakeholders, have been working on the new police chief search, and that we're probably getting close to there being a finalist and that being shared publicly. Once that is, I would encourage this commission to work with the Public Safety Committee on Council and the 4 counselors on that committee to engage the public broadly as an opportunity for our community to get to meet our new chief of police that has been selected through this process. I know it was a really, really thorough and efficient process, at least as my experience goes with other chiefs of police searches that the city has done. And so it would be great for the community to get an opportunity to meet the new chief as they make Burlington their home. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Sam. Do we have any other members of the public, either online or in person? Hearing none, we will move on to police department business. That will be the chief's report. Chief, I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Shaib, can you please share your screen with the chief's report so it's part of the record?
Mr. Smith, are you here for public comment?
Yes, I am.
Okay, you may begin. If you could state your name for the record, please.
Brogan Smith. I recently reported an alleged criminal conduct by a civilian to the Burlington Police Department and provided supporting evidence. I have not received a meaningful response regarding whether the allegation has been investigated or referred to the proper prosecutorial authority. I also subsequently contacted your commission about the lack of response from the police department. What is the commission's process for reviewing whether BPD appropriately handled a criminal investigation brought to its attention?
Thank you. We don't usually allow for a back and forth, but if you file a complaint with the PD, a citizen complaint, the commission does review those complaints.
Okay, so what's the proper way to do that?
You can file a complaint online at, Chief, do you know the exact address?
I don't. It's our website. Brogan, I received your email, I think about 48 hours ago. I reviewed it this afternoon. I'll be referring it for investigation. I'll be back in contact with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to be heard? Chief, turn it back over to you.
Excellent. I didn't get an affirmative response from Shad, but I'm just going to continue without the report on the screen. Oh, here we go. So, thank you, Shad. So on page 1 is just top-line data for the last 3 years, and you'll see that we're just, this data is all run as of July 31st, 2026. So just shy of 18,000 incidents in total for the department thus far this year. The second graph depicts the number of patrols. These are foot patrols and directed patrols that are conducted by sworn officers, community service officers, or community support liaisons. And you'll see we've got a drop this year in comparison to 2025. I largely attribute that to our low census data across all divisions, and we'll talk about our service levels in a subsequent slide. Moving on to page 2. This is just, again, by division, kind of trends that we're seeing in our team's work. So community service officer incidents, their title fighter, if you will, their top incident category in July of 26 was found lost property. Community support liaisons, their 2 competing top priorities appear to be welfare checks and encampment outreach. Again, no surprise given the unhoused crisis that we're dealing with in the downtown. And then moving on to page 3, sworn incident types over the last 12 months. What I like to illustrate here is that it's difficult for us to narrow this to even 10 or 5 to 7 top incident types because of the demands on our sworn officers. But in July of 26, we saw an outsized number of responses to complaints of disturbance, motor vehicle complaints, drugs, and retail theft. Moving on to page 4. The top graph is how we track our violent incidents, and of course they're broken out by category to the right of the chart. What I will tell you is that August has been a tremendously challenging month in terms of violence in the community, so we will see this crime trend tick upward in the September report to the Police Commission. The next graph is the number of incidents that are stacked or canceled prior to an officer response, and we're doing a pretty good job of keeping that number low, especially when you look back over the last 3 years. Moving on to the next page. BPD incidents in City Hall Park. So this data set removes all of our proactive efforts, meaning foot patrols are out, other things that officers are initiating with. And we see a little bit of decline. We're under some of the behavior that was reported by the public in 2025. The graph beneath that is the vicinity around City Hall Park, simply because we know our presence in the park or enforcement in the park does create some displacement. We track this area as well. Kind of a similar trend line there, but I will say that this graph doesn't really illustrate well the impact that the community's been feeling, particularly those that either live, reside adjacent to, or are trying to operate a business on College Street to the north of City Hall Park, and of course St. Paul Street between College and Bank Street has been really challenging this summer. Not depicted here in any way, but I thought it was relevant. I've got some data that came from the Vermont State Police for their time with us. Of course, they were in town from July 29th until August 16th of 2026. They recorded having 2,019 individual contacts with members of the public. They didn't issue any tickets or issue any warnings. They had 2 arrests. They handled 10 calls for service, and they assisted the Burlington Police Department in 35 times in a variety of different ways. Simultaneously, the Vermont Highway Patrol, formerly the DMV enforcement arm of AOT, they were in town. They spent a total of 84 hours patrolling in Burlington during that same time period, July to August. They conducted 119 traffic stops, issued 55 tickets, and made 4 arrests during their time in town. Moving on to the next page. our monthly arrests. So despite our low census of sworn officers, we're keeping track with the arrests that we've been making and consistent with 2025. I do like to highlight this because oftentimes we hear from the community that the police may be present, but you're not actually enforcing the law. This graph eliminates that 1,000% in my mind as it relates to criminality, and we'll talk about ordinance violations here moving forward. The bottom chart is our drug arrest activity. So just like the other trend lines of what's reported from the public, there's a seasonality to public drug consumption and suspected drug trafficking in public spaces. We see our arrest numbers following that line equally. Moving on, tickets and warnings. We saw a pretty decent drop from June into July in the number of tickets and warnings that our officers were issuing. I attribute this to two things. One, the number of officers that we have available to do this work, and two, the City Circle project has been it's got in a temporary hiatus now while the CJC figures out some funding for that program, and I believe that once it comes back online that the officers will be reoriented and motivated to issue the city ordinance tickets again. Then moving on to the next page, again, this is just a graphic of some specific ordinance enforcement that the police department tracks related to disorderly conduct, open container, city hall park drug possession, and city hall park alcohol possession. Again, typical seasonal line here, but that drop is simply because we didn't issue the same number of tickets. Moving on to the next page. This is slightly different, and we try desperately to keep how we report our data consistent. This graph used to illustrate the top 2% of folks that are kind of consuming our police resources. Very similar, but now we are actually drilling down to the people. So during the mayor's press conference a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the top 54 individuals. Now this group involves 56. The only reason that that differential exists, the cutoff line currently is 15 incidents with us. So we will always be up to, down to, hopefully down by a third moving forward, but it will be a bit of a moving target. But these top 56 people account for 19% of our incidents, which numerically is just shy of 1,300. What's also important to highlight about this population is that these folks are in no way crime victims. We're only tracking people that are either a person of interest, a suspect, or an arrestee. So you can be a victim of a crime and not find your way into this set. And we know that we want to focus on the people that are actually causing the crime, disorder, and harm in the community. So we felt it important to highlight that element of this data set. What do we know about this top 56? 68% of the group is unhoused. Moving on to the next page. The top 56, the top incident type that they're involved in is trespass, so 229 incidents of trespass, not surprising given the rate at which they are unhoused. Also suspicious events, ordinance violation, retail theft, disturbances, arrest on warrant, mental health issue, drugs, and violation and conditions of release. I see these numbers pretty significant and emblematic of really the challenge that we have downtown. And I'll tell you that from my perspective on what we're facing is that absent a low barrier shelter, two different shelters, day and night shelter, these conditions will not improve. You know, I've been here long enough to realize like that is a critical piece, along with our sworn staffing level, which is critically low right now. The top 56, as a percentile, again, very consistent with the chart above, but they amount to 25% of our overall responses to trespass complaints, 25% of our drug incidents, and 30% of our violations of conditions of release. I do have a degree of optimism with that percentile of violation of conditions of release because at least the court is being responsive in putting pretrial conditions of release on these folks and are hearing the cases. And the cases are actually being heard a little more expeditiously if the individual is part of what used to be the accountability docket, now that Sarah George is running it out of her office once a week, it's called the support court. So moving on to the next page. The top graph is just a raw incident count of how many times the top 56 folks have been a person of interest, suspect, or an arrestee. You'll see the top consumer is about 83 incidents, and then, as I spoke about earlier, 15 is the cutoff, and that's where that line kind of trends off. The bottom graphic is interesting. We put a filter on this to really illustrate how we're using different resources that are available. So those that are in blue represent folks that have been referred to the situation table. Those in red are folks that have been enrolled, for lack of a better term, in now what's called the support court and not the accountability docket. And then the purple color is they've both been heard at the situation table and are participating in the support court. And then the green is those that are involved in the treatment court. So what are we doing about the bars that are white? What we do know is that because we have an ability to share information outside the confines of HIPAA or being in social service work, that nearly all of this population is in some way touching social services and are being coordinated, whether they're a direct client of the Howard Center or you name the NGO partner in this work. And we look to add additional filters, such as what number of this population are on supervision with the Department of Probation and Parole. So we'll be adding those filters as time moves forward. Moving on to the next page.
Chief, can I ask you a question?
Certainly.
So maybe I missed this. Anyone who's in white, just, they don't fall into any one of those 4 categories?
Yes, the ones that are actually not illustrated, but actually the situation table, like support court or treatment court. So we're not, what we don't account for here is like a few of these people are definitely Howard's clients and involved in other social services in the community.
Okay. Thank you.
Moving on to staff, we have a total of 92 employees, 55 sworn officers, which is the lowest the Burlington Police Department has ever been, 37 professional staff. I thought it was important that we kind of break out how we have our sworn staff assigned. So between, in uniform services, between officers and supervisors, we only have 27 assigned to the Uniform Services Bureau. Critically low. When I came on the police department in 1997, Uniform Services was run with a minimum of 43 officers. We have 4 officers at the Burlington International Airport, and we're actually working on a contract where the Sheriff's Department will be covering 2 shifts at the airport because we have insufficient officers to staff that division. And we have 8 detectives and 2 supervisors in our Detective Service Bureau, so we're down 2 positions in detective services. We still have 5 long-term leave involving officers. We have 4 officers in total in training, 3 of whom are at the Vermont Police Academy. The 4th is actually here, engaged in field training, and we hope to have her assigned to a shift by October. We have our 1 sworn officer as our department recruiter, and then 4 officers in the command. So it's the 2 deputy chiefs, myself, and we have a sergeant who is on light duty who's assisting in the administrative bureau. So in calendar year 26, the department's had 3 sworn members retire from service and 4 sworn members resign. The department continues to actively recruit for sworn officers, community service officers, emergency communication specialists, and for a community support liaison. The department, we did have a very successful year with our Beach and Parks Patrol. Several of these folks aspire to to work in public safety once they graduate from college. So we see this as a potential feeder program for the department. And then lastly, we started a formal internship program, and we welcomed an intern from Champlain College who will be spending her fall semester of her senior year with us. Moving on to the next page. These are new graphs. Jeff did a really nice job of kind of breaking down what's it mean or what's it look like when we have this few officers in the street doing our work. So median sworn officer response count by month. You can see we went back nearly a decade here, but it trend kind of along 50 incidents or so, median, trended upwards a bit in 23 to 60, and then a steady incline to where we are today, where the median officer response per month is 90 incidents. And that is a tremendous amount of work. The next chart illustrates the number of sworn officers who responded to 100 calls per month. And you'll see that line was, kind of just ebbed and flowed along, 15, low during the pandemic, building back up to 23 officers responding to 100 calls per month. Going back to the previous chart where I illustrated the number of folks that we have assigned in uniform, we only have 20 officers assigned to patrol. So those 3 additional, I know with fairly decent confidence, are 3 detectives that work a lot of overtime in patrol. So the whole team is working at a pace that frankly is not sustainable. And if these staffing numbers persist, I will have to take a hard look at incident types in which we will no longer be able to respond to. And then I've got Jeff here with us online. He's going to join us to walk us through a little bit of the work that we've been doing on the use of force data from 2025 in terms of better understanding the disparity between uses of force between white subjects and black subjects. So Jeff, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening. I should start by saying, as you'll notice, I have my 18-month-old with me. Her mom's working night shift at the hospital right now, and so Chloe is joining the police commission meeting this evening. I thought the mac and cheese would buy me enough time, but I was wrong. So this will be quick. So after the annual report looking at the use of force disparities in 2025 between black and white subjects and most other years as well, Chief and I met to sort of figure out how could we dive deeper and try and get at the heart of this and potentially turn it around for the department. And we also met with Dr. Perkins from REIB to talk about these things. And so I ended up just kind of slicing the data a lot of different ways to try and give us some leads or sort of some additional clues maybe as we began sort of parsing out qualitatively uses of force. And so these are a couple data points that jumped out to me and that I think will maybe help guide our process as we start looking at these disparities. So the first one is this blue and green chart, which looks at the percentage of uses of force by hour, by race. So each group of 2 bars there represents an hour of the day, starting at 12 midnight and going to 11 p.m. And the blue bars represent percentage of uses of force against black people, and the green bars represent uses of force against white people. But we can see that between the hours of midnight and about 4 a.m., hi baby, between the hours of midnight and 4 a.m., it's about 25% of uses of force against black people occurred during the hours of between midnight and 4 a.m. And as a comparison, about 15% of uses of force against white people happened between 12 and 4 a.m. Again, not exactly sure what that means, but it's something that jumps out to me as a data analyst, and something we're gonna use to help inform as we start kind of looking at a case-by-case basis of these uses of force. And then similarly, there's just 2 incident types that we looked at that had a specific disparity that jumped out to us. The first one is disorderly conduct incidents. So on the left in that disorderly conduct graph is the percentage of black person incidents that had a use of force as compared to on the right, white person incidents for disorderly conducts. And you can see that in 2025, 18% of black person incidents resulted in a use of force for disorderly conduct compared to 10% for white people. And that disparity existed throughout all 5 years. Across all 5 years, I believe the numbers are 18 or 17% for Black people compared to about 11% for white people. So it's a pretty good sample size at this point. So again, an incident type that we're gonna have a special eye for as we start looking at these uses of force on a more case-by-case basis. And there's one more, thank you, Shai. Looking at trespass incidents. So in 2025, 3.5% of trespass person incidents for Black people resulted in a use of force compared to 1.6% of white person incidents. That jumped out to us, especially as trespasses sort of have grown over the last couple of years. And so that's another one we're going to be looking at. I will say when you zoom out to all 5 years, the percentage is about 2% for both races. But we wanted to add it to the list because this year there was that disparity. And lastly, this last graph is just tracking total incidents with use of force as a percentage of all incidents that sworn officers responded to. So in 2025, 1.1% of incidents had a use of force, which is 267 total incidents. Percentage-wise, about in line with the last couple of years, though prior to 2022, the number was more like 0.8. So we're seeing a very slow increase there. It is still a small number, but it's certainly something we're continuing to track, and again, trying to figure out ways to use this data to inform non-data practices, whether that qualitative reviews, and hopefully ultimately to not have these disparities be so prevalent moving forward. I'm gonna mute the mic and turn my camera off now to get Chloe off the screen. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that. Why we think the qualitative dive is super important is we wanted to understand what our officers are being dispatched to, what they're finding upon arrival, who the subjects are, what's their history with the police department, and then something that struck me recently when I actually had to apply force out here on College Street is the degree of force used, because we've got a good standard in Vermont. It's anything above compliant handcuffing, and what I had to do is we had a person that was wanted on a warrant. He wasn't convinced that he wanted to go with us. He wasn't actively resisting, but I placed my hands on his forearm and put them behind his back so he could be handcuffed, and that was the force, and it's reportable. And I think that's a good standard, but I think it's important context, because I believe that some members of the public, when they think about what a police use of force looks like, they think about a very violent encounter that they've seen, whether they've seen it in person or on television, and whether or not that violent encounter was justified or not. It's all important context as well. So we're going to dig in. These are pretty small numbers, so we feel as though that we can get a good picture of what our team was faced with in these given moments. And then I hope to loop back with Dr. Perkins and talk to her more about that. She's helped inform some of these questions that led to these illustrations, and I feel as though that this is going to be a bit of a timely exploration to figure out, what our officers are facing in the field. Are we responding congruent to the law, policy, and training? And is this emblematic of a use of force issue, or is it further evidence of certain races of folks showing up in criminal justice data sets? Because we know the history here. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Chief, and Jeff and Chloe. I had just a couple of questions. First question, on what page is this? The page with the slide that's titled Percentage of Total Users by Force by Race by Hour. The 8 a.m. Total seems, if nothing else, interesting, and I'm wondering if you have any insight into what the incidents were that the officers were responding to that resulted in use of force?
It would only be speculation,
Okay.
but I can flag that, and we can definitely give that a look.
Okay, just out of curiosity. And then also, Chief, you said that because of the shortage of officers, there might be incidents that you are no longer able to prioritize. Can you give us examples of what those incidents might be? It's fine if you can't.
I don't, because, and I know I'm little too old school in this regard that, you know, the public calls, we should go. But we're at a point where we're going to have to really look carefully at what we have to go to, because each incident, it may be a report that can be completed in a sentence or two, or it's a full custody arrest that takes 3 hours of documentation and report preparation for a court proceeding. So we'll look very, very carefully at it, but I'm afraid maybe we could move some things to online report where it could at least be screened, and if it needs to be assigned for follow-up, we could look at, that might be a best first step.
Okay, thank you. And then last question on, on incident counts for the top 56 people in the year 2026, the chart that starts at 83 and goes all the way down to 15. After 15, are there a bunch of people with 14 and then a bunch of people with 13 and a bunch of people with 12, or does it drop off significantly after 15?
No, it's a pretty gradual
Okay.
line down. So there's decent numbers of folks with upwards of a dozen incidents.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from any other? Karen?
Thank you. So the first question I have is of the top 56. Are those 56 because you now are basically by person without naming them? Do they tend to be the same month after month?
Pretty decent consistency, but there will be folks that, for whatever reason, more escalated at a time. They could easily rack up a dozen incidents in a couple of days. But I would say that the names that I know go with each one of those bars have been fairly consistent all summer long.
And then the other question is so 38 of them are not housed, 18 of them are. Are any of those 18 that you know of living with someone who might be helping them with support?
I can't say how many are or how many aren't, but there is a mix.
Okay, all right. And then the other question, which I don't know if maybe I'm deducing too much from this, is that if you look at the top incident types of the top 56 people, which account for basically 20%, a fifth of the calls, that trespass and suspicious event are the number 1 and number 2. Is there an argument to be made here that if those people who are in the top 56 were all housed, that those two numbers would go down significantly, in your opinion?
That's my belief. That's
Okay.
my belief, firmly.
So if they were housed, if those 38 people were housed, possibly needing other services that are on the rest of that list, that number would go down significantly.
Certainly, one caveat to that, though, these are folks that would need low barrier shelter option. So like when I think about how the day and the way station used to operate pre-pandemic, it would have to be back to that level. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate the work that COTS is doing, especially on North Avenue at the day station, because they do have a higher barrier in terms of sobriety, and I think it's a better experience for the folks that are trying to turn it around. But we've got to figure out some type of shelter solution for these folks that haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah, I think we did, I think this was after the pandemic when the, what is now Champlain Harbor, but was the Champlain Inn. It just was a challenging situation, but that was a low barrier. And I don't remember how many people it was, but I think it was more than 30. It might have been 40. In fact, that might have been one of the challenges, was that maybe there were too many people for what it was, and for the staff. And then the only other question I had is of the, so 3 sworn officers retired from service. They had fulfilled their either 20 or 25. And then 4 sworn officers resigned. Were exit interviews done with those 4?
I don't know if they were done with all 4. One left from the Vermont Police Academy. Typically, there isn't an exit interview. One officer went to the St. Albans Police Department for better home work-life balance. One officer recently resigned, a command officer recently resigned, and well, I can't remember the fourth, but I can follow up on that. And I know that HR captures that data if the employee is willing to do an exit interview.
So I guess the reason I ask is because obviously if someone who was in the academy, in other words, they hadn't completed, is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's obviously there are four, I guess the point I was trying to make is that those are four we don't know what the fourth was, but of the three we know, they were unique situations. These
Yes.
were not individuals who resigned due to issues of low morale or not feeling good leadership or something like that. They had, I mean, a work-life balance is obviously a legitimate reason, of course, maybe being closer to home, and the other reason, which, is also in a unique situation, and then the one at the academy. So I think that to me is a good sign that if people resign for individual circumstances, that's different than resigning because they are unhappy here.
That's a fair assessment, and I agree with it, but it would be remiss if I didn't add that the team is feeling the stress right now. And, it's a daunting task to come to work in the city of Burlington and know that you're going to work a 10-hour shift in patrol with 3 or 4 of you. And I think that is starting really to weigh on our younger staff, and I believe that will lead to further attrition complications.
And then the last question I had is on the airport, which once, there was a time where there were 8 officers at the airport. Now that there is 1 TSA entry and 1 TSA exit, there are only 4. And at one time, doing airport duty was, the tours rotated, but mostly the people that appeared to either want those rotations or got them were older officers. A number of those older officers probably have retired by now. And my understanding was that a lot of the younger officers really didn't necessarily want that rotation. Is that still the case, and is that why, maybe to some degree, getting because in the past, it has been fought doing, outsourcing that, but now it appears as though, and is that because of understaffing, or is that because also there isn't quite the appetite to do that work as much as there once was?
No, so in the last collective bargaining agreement, we were able to secure an agreement that allowed the airport, if we had insufficient staffing, to contract with an outside agency. We did commit in that same agreement to have 6 available shifts. It just works with a 10-hour work schedule for the hours for which we have to cover at the airport. But for this upcoming tour, which starts a week from now, we did not have the officers to be able to assign to a shift out there, and it necessitated this negotiation with the Sheriff's Department. Now, in terms of historically, yes, folks at the end of their career would typically go to the airport. We still see that. But even, back 20 plus years ago, we would see officers, if they started to get a little fatigued downtown, needed, to kind of reset, oftentimes they would bid congruent with their seniority to go to the airport. And I see that as, a valuable retention element moving forward. Do the youngest of the young ever want to go to the airport? No. I never went to the airport until I supervised it, but I supervised it. I was the night shift lieutenant, and I supervised the airport. So I was downtown, but I had responsibility for the airport. I've never actually worked a full shift at the airport.
Well, you just haven't gotten old enough, I guess.
I think the time's going to run out before I go to the airport.
But that was always to a large degree, that was the case, that it was the older officers. And I know in having had conversations with some of them, they often did say, I'm too old to chase. I need to leave that to the younger guys. Anyway, thank you. Thanks for that information.
Anybody else?
Yeah. Thanks for sharing the data that you had from when the state police and the highway patrol were visiting. I mean, our purview as police commissioners is oversight of the Burlington Police Department, but I know that this data set is also what you share with the Public Safety Committee, who cares about Burlington as a whole. And whether you guys or the mayor or the governor is inviting or sending, other law enforcement officers here, I'm wondering if it would be possible, in coordination with Jeff, to have this information about incidents that are happening in our city that aren't through your department, but are through some other place, so that in a kind of summation, broad overview of public safety, what's occurring, we could include those in the future.
Yeah, I think there is a path toward that. We'd have to have a little more coordination with our state partners to have that lined up beforehand. We had a pretty short runway on
Yes.
this last project.
Definitely.
But
I know the data is somewhere. It's just asking nicely and maybe eventually getting it, so.
absolutely. And, I do want to say I'm thankful that the state police and the highway patrol joined us here. In particular, the highway patrol, they were able to do traffic enforcement that we simply don't have the bandwidth for, and we do have some challenges on certain roadways. And then the state police helped have uniform presence in the downtown. And I know that, there's divide in the community about how folks feel about that, but overwhelmingly, I hear the cry for more uniformed police officers, and that was a degree of relief for us in the middle of the summer.
Thank you. I have just two questions, and I want to also, before that, attest to that you're still a young man, so you still get plenty of time. My two questions are, one, the repeated contacts shown in the report. From your perspective, what interventions or partnership would you have the greatest impact in reducing these repeated contacts while connecting with these individuals with the appropriate services?
Yeah, in terms of the top 56, we need a shelter.
Okay.
We need a low barrier night shelter, a low barrier overnight shelter, and a low barrier day shelter. Ideally, not co-located. So folks have a cadence as to when they're where they need to be at a certain time. It just helps regulate their sobriety, kind of their expectations, and it also helps regulate the amount of personal property that they're able to amass, because like when you look at the old shelter option, you couldn't bring a ton of stuff with you into the way station overnight. And what we're seeing now is folks, because they're literally living on a city street, amassing a lot of property, and that's become really problematic for people just to use the sidewalk.
Thank you. The second one is basically the workload and the staffing. Given the workload trends that you just spoke about, or rather shown in the report, where do you see the greatest staffing pressure right now in the entire department?
Sworn officers.
Okay.
Hands down. And that's why I think it's important, even if you kind of dig into the work that our community service officers are doing and our community support liaisons, I think through one, better assignment, clarity and role, we've got those employees appropriately aligned to the incidents for which they're responsible for. The community service officers, that's simple because we have an MOA with the police officers union on what they can do. The community support liaisons and our street outreach partners from the Howard Center, their first responders, danger acuity obviously is always considered on 4 different kind of social service related incident types for us, but there's limits on what they can do. And the chart that shows our sworn officer demands, just the sheer number of complaints that they're responding to in that snapshot of their work illustrates that we're critically understaffed. And if we don't start making gains over the next 24 months, this is going to be maybe a point of no return. Because what we have before us is a period of about 16 months, 18 months, where we don't have anyone retirement eligible. So that's, helpful, but we have to be able to improve working conditions for our people, for our folks in uniform services, so it's not overwhelming, and we have to show them a glimmer of hope by having the ability to attract new recruits who are successful in the hiring process and at the Vermont Police Academy, and then in our field training program, to show that there's some wind in our sails.
Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions? No. Thank you, Chief.
Of course, thank you.
We will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is commission business. We will hear reports from all committees, and I can start with animal control. We have a vicious dog hearing scheduled for the dog Moose next Monday in this room at 6 p.m. Members of the public are welcome to attend in person or online. Additionally, Commissioner Janorio and I met with Lisa Mylott, who is the state of Vermont's new Director of Animal Welfare. It was an informational meeting discussing the nature of the Animal Control Committee and broader animal control issues. Commissioner Janorio, would you like to give a complaints update?
Sure. So we have a complaints committee meeting to follow as soon as we adjourn this meeting. I have been on the complaints committee and chairing it for a year, since I started. And per new bylaws, we should only really have people in that role for 6 months so that everybody can have a chance to be on that committee and be part of the process. So I will run that meeting today, and then we can see who wants to volunteer to sit on that subcommittee. And if those people can choose amongst themselves, I think the whole commission is supposed to choose who the chair is for that. Yep, that's it.
Great. Any other comments, remarks, questions from other commissioners? Commissioner Von Herman?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I thank you for your service and fully support you as our chair, and know that I have confidence not only in you but in the entire team that we're here to support each other. So I just wanted to share my full support for you and for the entire team, and thank you for all that you do for us.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I appreciate that. Okay, we will now move on to commendations. I believe we have 3. And I apologize if I pronounce anyone's names incorrectly. I will start with one dated from the 27th that just missed our last meeting. This is to the chief, or no, it's from the chief. Burlington Board of Police Commissioners, it is my honor to recognize Officer Moran, Officer Bartlett, and Corporal Gonzalez with a formal letter of commendation for their exceptional courage, professionalism, and decisive action taken during a recent critical incident in downtown Burlington. On July 5th, 2026, shortly after midnight, these officers were conducting a foot patrol on Lower Church Street. While emerging from City Hall Park onto Church Street, these officers heard a single gunshot ring out. Without hesitation and with complete disregard for their own safety, the officers immediately ran towards the sound of gunfire to confront the threat and protect the public. As the officers responded, Officer Moran observed a male subject running northbound on Church Street from the area of Main Street who appeared to be holding a handgun. Officer Moran swiftly engaged the suspect, effectively taking him to the ground and disarming him. Officer Bartlett and Corporal Gonzalez immediately assisted in gaining control of the suspect, ensuring he was safely taken into custody without further violence. While the suspect was being secured, Officer Moran recovered the suspect's firearm and immediately transitioned to searching for injured people. Remarkably, no one had been injured by the gunfire. The officers' teamwork, sound tactical judgment, and unwavering commitment to public safety prevented further harm and restored order under extremely stressful circumstances. The actions of these officers reflect the highest standards of the Burlington Police Department and exemplify a level of courage, dedication, and selflessness the community should be very proud of. Respectfully, Sean Burke. And then we have another one. Chief, is it pronounced Wagling? Wagling, okay. This is also from the chief. This is to Anna Wagling. Anna, I wanted to take a moment to commend you on your outstanding presentation during the mayor's press conference. Your remarks were detailed, informative, informative and did an excellent job highlighting the positive impact the situation table is having in our community. The ease and clarity with which you explain the situation table process, its participants, and its purpose reflected not only your deep understanding of the work, but also your genuine commitment to collaboration and community safety. Thank you for your leadership, your commitment to the mission of CAIP, and for representing Burlington Police Department in the situation table so exceptionally well. Your efforts are making a positive impact on our community, and they are greatly appreciated. Very respectfully, Sean Burke. And then we have one last one, addressed to Chief Burke. Chief Burke, I wanted to pass my appreciation for Corporal Montalvo's dedication in a recent case. In this case, Officer Gurung had been assigned as a primary officer on 7/25/2026 at approximately 03:06 hours. We received reports of a male with severe injury to his face that was walking through downtown. Ultimately, he went to Simon's downtown for assistance and was located there. The victim had extreme injury to his mouth area, was losing a lot of blood, and was generally unable to talk. Corporal Montalvo acted quickly to provide first aid bandages to the victim to help with blood loss reduction. In the end, the victim did need blood transfusions to recover from losing too much blood, so Corporal Montalvo's actions were well justified. The victim was transported to UVM MCER for emergency surgery and had only been able to provide a very minimal statement beforehand. Tania's boyfriend did this. From that, Corporal Montalvo was able to recall having recently seen Shantaya Miles and her boyfriend Tyler Sears downtown. In the following time, he doggedly searched for Miles and Sears, locating them numerous times, but their efforts to flee him were ultimately foiled when he and I cornered them in the area of Cherry Street. Due to his locating them, we were able to collect statements from them where they made untrue statements, documented Sears' clothing, which we later learned he had changed after the assault, documented what appeared to be blood on Sears' hands, shoes, and arms, and gave them an opportunity to explain the situation, which they denied involvement in. By the end of the shift, the victim was still not able to speak, but Corporal Montalvo stayed after shift and was able to get an interview into the victim and learn important details of the assault, as well as learn of the extent of the victim's injuries. The victim had a 5-inch slice on one side of his mouth and a 2-inch slice on the other side of his mouth. This amounted to what one would call a Joker face. After having been able to interview the suspect identities of Miles and Sears were firmed up. Corporal Montalvo did not complain about now being tasked with taking over the case and writing up appropriate charges for Miles and Sears. This was a long process on the end of a long night, and Corporal Montalvo performed admirably. Both Miles and Sears were promptly arrested and held without bail. Throughout this case, Corporal Montalvo demonstrated excellent life protection, team support, diligence, and public safety dedication. Sergeant Eric Kratochville, I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Cradaville.
Great, thank you. I should know that, that's my vet's last name. Thank you to those officers. Chief, is there one more?
Maybe it was added after.
Maybe I need to refresh.
I'm happy to read it if you want.
Thank you, that'd be great.
I just read a whole bunch of stuff. It's from the mayor. It was sent also via email, so in case anybody hasn't read it yet. It says, "Good morning, BPD colleagues. I want to take a moment to extend a note of appreciation to each of you. These past few weeks have been a challenging time to serve our city between the short-staffed reality of our officer ranks and the increased demands on your entire team. Your work does not go unseen by me and city leadership. I appreciate officers for showing up each day this summer during stretches of time when we have been short-staffed. These shifts put added pressure on each of you when there is a smaller team. I recognize that burden. Many of you stepped forward even more to take on additional overtime shifts related to the governor's recent regional conference in our city earlier in August. I also appreciate the officers on shift the weekend of August 14th to 16th during the cluster of violent incidents, and then the very fast, capable work of our detective team who quickly worked to apprehend individuals involved within a matter of hours or days. This is not easy work, and you all continue to show your dedication to our city. Thank you. To our CAPE team, thank you for your daily work engaging victims, especially assisting in cases where we need to build deeper relationship with parts of our community. I know members of the CAPE team helped to engage impacted immigrant families from the August 14th to 16th incidents. This is in addition to the proactive work you all do to support folks in our community who are really suffering from chronic homelessness and other complicated factors. The work within the situation table is showing real promise, and I am very proud of our team for developing a new model being picked up by other tables across the country. This model will help Burlington be better informed in the risk factors that help lead people to causing harm to themselves and others. I also see and appreciate the work you do. To our emergency communication specialists, you are the critical first voices and responders to anything that comes in. Thank you for continuing to bring steady hand and support work in an often very difficult scenario. We have many incidents that are not reported on in the media, and you hold so much of the real and hard stories that the general public will never know. Thank you for your supporting this community. And to our CSO team, your tireless work lately to work to stabilize City Hall Park is deeply appreciated. We have a lot of challenges there, as we all know. Your work to disrupt behaviors and drug use is appreciated. Also, your work on encampments and helping to stabilize those areas of our city is also appreciated. I know we do not have enough people to do this important work alongside you at this point. We also have bigger work to do as an entire city and state to help get at the root cause of these issues. In the meantime, thank you for all of your work to address these acute issues. We are all working hard to make this city safer for everyone. I appreciate you all being critical partners in this work. Peace, Mayor Emma Mulvaney-Stanek.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chief, I have a question about commendations. When we get commendations that aren't from you or from the mayor or emailed to us, but from citizens, do the officers receive a copy of those commendations?
So if they come directly to the police commission, I
Yeah.
don't know if those are being shared. It would be fantastic that they, if they would be shared with Shibe and myself, that way we can pass those along and then also place a copy in their file.
Yep, I thought that might be the case. We can definitely do that going forward. Okay, that brings us to the announcement of our next meeting date, which is Tuesday, September 22nd, 2026. And now we are at adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Aye. We are adjourned.